Hey everyone. So I wanted to do a quick rundown deck tech of my Victor list for Origins. I know everyone's kind of talking about Spiritforged, but we still got about a month left of Origins in North America. So I thought, give some people some love. There aren't too many Victor content creators out here, and I'm basically a Victor specialist. I'm playing Victor since release. Uh, Attended a ton of events. My results are quite decent. I've attended 6 skirmishes. Got two firsts, second, a third, fifth, and an 11th. The one that was 11th was out of 78 players, and I was the highest victor. So hopefully that gives a little bit of credentials for my victor experience. So I wanted to quickly go over this deck. There's a couple reasons to play Victor. Um, One reason is my list is very cheap. It's about $70 for the entire list. And there are other budget decks, but out of all the budget decks, it is the easiest to play, which means fewer lines to think about, and the lines that you do think about, you can think about a little more deeply, which leads to a little bit higher quality of play. This is in comparison to other budget decks like Yasuo and Teemo. But yeah, so let's quickly go over the list. Obviously, we're running Herald of the Arcane, and then our chosen champion is going to be Victor. Yellow Victor is just better than Blue Victor in Origins. You just don't have enough quality spells to be able to play on your opponent's turn, to be able to get recruits out of them. Yellow Victor lets you utilize things like sprites, as well as all your 2 drops and 3 drops to create recruits. The name of the game is get as many recruits as you can while maintaining tempo with your opponents, finishing them off with big spells. First thing we'll talk about are the gears. So we're running 2 Seals of Unity. The reason you're running 2 and not 3 is because, well, I was running 3 for a while and it really bricks your draws. Seal is something that you're really happy to see in your opening hand. Um, if you draw 2 in your opening hand, you're really happy to mulligan 1 away, so that you're basically guaranteed to have good draws going forward for the rest of the game. The reason you're not running 3 is because it really sucks as a top deck. There have been games where I draw Seal into Seal and I just instantly lose. So running 2 means that you're going to have 0 to 1 on average for most of your games, which is pretty much good enough. You don't need to get to 2 Seals. Your deck kind of runs out of steam a little bit if you do. Going over the 2 drops, this deck runs 6 2 drops. So it runs 3x Daring Poro, and slightly spicy here, we're running 3x Treferian Glory Seeker. So Daring Poro is pretty obvious, but Treferian Glory Seeker can seem a little bit spicy. Um, and you might notice that this deck is not running any Soaring Scouts and any Watchful Sentries. There are a few reasons for this. Soaring Scout and Watchful Sentry are somewhat redundant in the deck. Soaring Scout and Watchful Sentry are both 1 might units, so they get eaten by everything. This means that it leads to a lot of passive play. Your turn 1, turn 2 plays involving Watchful Sentry and Soaring Scout are basically run into a point, have the unit die, generate some marginal value, and then it is on you to take those battlefields back. The good thing about Daring Poro and Treferian Glory Seeker is these both attack as 3s. Well, can attack as 3s. Treferian Glory Seeker can also hold or defend as 3s as well. This is very relevant. There's a lot of 2 might units in the game, especially for the more relevant matchups. So this means attacking in Stalwart Poro, like Stalwart Poro on the attack, Pouty Poro, Daring Poro on the defense, Traveling Merchant, Sneaky Deckhand, Ravenbloom Student if they don't have any mana up, stuff like that. So there's a lot of 2s, and just being able to utilize 2 mana units that are able to attack as 3 are very good for the early game getting into battlefields, because you really need to score points early on in this game. You don't have to run 8 2 drops in this deck. You're kind of sacrificing a little bit of your early game consistency, because if you don't draw a 2 drop, you can always just play Recruit on turn 1. And if you're going second, this deck, spoiler alert, runs a shit ton of 3 drops, so you're not too worried about bricking your opening hand. You can always mulligan for them as well. So going into the 3 drops, you're playing 3x Faithful Manufacturer. Pretty standard. This deck it's pretty much the staple of the deck. You just need to generate a bunch of recruits. You're running 3x Vanguard Captain. There's always the high roll potential of having Seal of Unity and Vanguard Captain in your hand. It's probably like one every 2 matches, so about one every 5 or 6 games you'll be able to high roll off it, but it's not too big of a deal. If you're going first, um, it'll be turn 3. You'll play 3-drop plus Vanguard Captain or 2-drop recruit Vanguard Captain. Pretty good. If you're going second, you can recruit turn 1 and then play a 2-drop plus Vanguard Captain on turn 2. Quite decent as well. Very, very solid. This deck also runs 2x Noxian Drummer. Um, so this used to be a 3. It's a pretty bad card, all things considered. It dies to half a falling star. It dies to Hextech Ray. It kind of dies to everything. The big winner or big reason you run it, number one, is you just want more 3-drops. Number two, it's really good into purple. Purple has Gust and Fight or Flight, which are really, really annoying. And Noxian Drummer gets to spawn a second body, which helps. So if you're running into an empty battlefield and they want to Gust to stop you from getting the point, it still kind of sucks, but you do get the point. You do get the recruit, especially into things like Teemo, where it's a 1 might unit holding into a battlefield. Running Noxian Drummer into there and threatening to trade the 1 recruit means that a lot of times it's going to be something like Fight or Flight, Teemo back to base or something like that, which makes them lose a lot of tempo, a lot of value. So it's really, really good. And then last mainstay of the deck is 3x Sprite Mother. So Sprite Mother is really, really, really good into this deck. You really need good, efficient ways to get onto the board and get onto the board quickly. Sprites are really good at that. Another thing notably is that when sprites die, it does trigger Viktor. So you do get the 1 recruit as a refund from Sprite Mother if you do have Viktor on the field, which is quite nice as well. So it can be something like if your Viktor survives a turn, you untap, you play Sprite Mother, run the Sprite in, it'll die, you'll get your recruit. You're pretty happy. Two units left in the main board. The first one is 1x Riptide Rex. I wasn't super happy putting this card into my deck. It forced me to change my rune balance from 7 order 5 mind, or 7 yellow 5 blue, to 6 and 6. Notably, you'll see later, this deck is running 3x Singularity. Singularity is super, super important to this deck, and I basically cast Riptide Rex as just a bad Singularity. The reason it's bad, it only hits at battlefield, so it's not that great into purple. It's like marginally better into Kaisa than Singularity is, but even then it's like not super great. Basically folds to all purple, but that's fine. I was finding in my games that like if I draw Singularity, I'm really happy and have a really good chance of winning. But the games where I don't draw Singularity, I basically instantly lose. So Riptide Rex is just a fourth bad Singularity. The last creature in the deck is somewhat controversial, and I hate it, but it's hilarious. It's 1x Vanguard Attendant. This card is bad. There are some reasons that I am running it. First is it eats over Kaisa, it eats over Noxus Hopeful, eats over all format units, which there are quite a significant number of them, and it trades into Red Darius, which is good enough. This deck really, really leverages 6 mana spells. And as you may have noticed by me saying this is the last creature, this list does not run any Thousand-Tailed Watchers. I have Thousand-Tailed Watchers. I opt not to play them because I do think they're actually not a good fit into this deck. Thousand-Tailed Watcher is easily one of the best blue cards in the game. However, it just doesn't synergize well with this deck. One reason for that is this deck really, really likes getting to 7 mana, casting a big spell, and playing a recruit. And these big spells recycle a lot of runes. So it's very, very difficult to get to where you want to be with Thousand Tailed Watcher, which is 9 mana. You'd like to be able to play it accelerated and play a recruit in the same turn. You really, really want to be playing recruits as often as you can because it's basically free value. Vanguard Attendant lets you do that. If you're at 7 mana, you can play Vanguard Attendant and a recruit, and you're pretty happy. If you're at 6 mana, you play Vanguard Attendant, you go down to 5. Next turn, you're at 7, and you're pretty happy. So Vanguard Attendant helps fill out the curve a little bit on like the medium to high end. It's not a very good unit, but you kind of it kind of scraped the bottom of the barrel with units in this list because blue yellow doesn't really have access to that many great units. Okay, so that's all the units and the gears. I'll just move these over to the side and we can go over through the spells. All right, so for the spells, this one's not too controversial. 3x Hidden Blade. Hidden Blade's super good. Generally, early game, you're not using it too much. It is actually a card that I've been mulliganing away a lot more in the early game. It's really something you want to be seeing a little bit later. It's something that you want to see when you have a seal out, and when you really, really need to draw cards or when you need to finish the game. You're running 3x Call of the Week. Call of the Week is super, super good in some matchups and like kind of not that good into other matchups. It gets defied in a lot of key matchups, which does really suck. But you know they're not always gonna have defy, and if they don't have defy, this card like wipes the board with them. Notably Mastery and a little bit Ari as well. Next, we're running 3x Call to Glory. So this card was included in the list first before Treferian Glory Seeker. I was originally running 3x Watchful Sentry, 3x Daring Poro, and then 3x Call to Glory. I felt that this is partially inspiration from the Cody Williams Houston list using 2x Call to Glory. And I tested it a few times. It did really suck to play with, but I do think Call to Glory is a necessary evil in this deck, and Treferian Glory Seeker helps to mitigate that a little bit, because Legion does come in with a buff, and that buff can pay for Call to Glory. Call to Glory, the +3 is really, really relevant. There's a lot of people talking about back-to-back occasionally, like as a replacement to the Call to Glory slot. And back-to-back is like not quite good enough. If you guys don't know, back-to-back is 3 mana, give a reaction, give +2 to 2 units. The difference between +2 and +3 is pretty significant in this deck. +3 allows you to eat over any 2-drop. It lets you trade into Kaisa as like a really bad cleave. It will help you dodge Falling Star. It helps Viktor dodge both halves of Falling Star or half of Singularity. If they're trying to play around +2 with a Cathian Rain, they can invest 3 ticks of a Cathian Rain into Viktor, but if they want to play around Call to Glory, they need to invest 4 ticks of a Cathian Rain into that. So the +3 is quite relevant. Another thing that comes up a lot is things like Gust or Hextech Ray. Gust only does 3 and below. Hextech Ray does 3 damage. So if your recruits are going in for 1 and you can Call to Glory them up to 4, they can trade into things like Raven Blooms, stuff like that, which you're perfectly happy with. So Call to Glory is, I think, significantly better than back to back. If you're not going to play Call to Glory, don't play back to back. Another reason to run Call to Glory is it just gives you play. It gives you reaction speed. The problem with not playing 3x Call to Glory is you kind of just roll over and die. A lot of Viktor lists, I feel like, suffer from this problem. If you're not running Call to Glory, what happens is like they play a removal spell, they wipe your board, you instantly lose the game, and there's just no coming back. You can play as many accelerated sprites and Vanguard Attendants and Thousand Tailed Watchers as you want, you just never quite are able to claw back. So Call to Glory helping to kind of play around some of the removal is really, really important. Next, we're running 3 Consult the Past. Lots of decks like to run 2 Consult the Pasts, but since this deck is number 1 playing 2 seals, number 2 doesn't need to go above 7 mana. You're happy to run 3, and this helps to mitigate a lot of like the problems with having such a unit heavy list. We're running a ton of 2-drops, or not a ton of 2-drops, a ton of 3-drops, and like a good number of 2-drops. So there's a lot of times in the later game where you're just top decking a 3-drop and you hate your life. So running 3x Consult the Past, 3x Hidden Blade helps to mitigate this issue a little bit. Next up, we're playing 2 Imperial Decrees and 1 Grand Stratagem. These are pretty interchangeable. Imperial Decree is, on average, exactly the same as Grand Stratagem. There are some slight pros and cons to Imperial Decree over Grand Stratagem. I was originally running 2 Grand Stratagems, 1 Imperial Decree, and then 1 Decree in the side. Right now I'm doing 2 Decrees in main, 1 Stratagem in the main, and then 1 Stratagem in the side. Reason for this is I was running 2 Stratagems main when I was running 3x drummers, Noxian drummer. Now that I'm down to 2, it doesn't really feel necessary to run so many. Grand Stratagem is better on the defense than Decree is. Decree basically on defense is only good into like Annie when they're running Vi, and you can just suicide kill a unit for Vi, which is fine. So you're happy playing 2 of them. Imperial Decree also can get Mystic Reversal, which is kind of funny. And that's kind of one of the only reasons that, and it's also cheaper, so you're pretty happy playing it. And last off, you're playing 3x Singularity. This is like the key card in this deck. Singularity is so good into Kaisa and to Annie. Like neither of those decks really run a ton of big bodies. Annie, you're really happy just killing like Noxus Hopeful, Darius, Kaisa, stuff like that, and exactly the same for the Kaisa matchup. Kaisa, Noxus Hopeful, Darius. You can hit Watcher and then run a Recruit into it. It's fine. There's just a ton of things that you hit with Singularity. It's okay into green, like Yasuo, Master Yi matchups. It's fine. It's not great. They can play like On Guard or Discipline to kind of get over it. But Master Yi has a lot of 6s in his deck. Tasty Fae Folk as well as Master Yi Champion unit are 6s. And if you're hitting things like Wheel of Water or Poro, stuff like that, it's like it's good enough. They don't run that many units, so it's not too big of a deal. But yeah, that's the main board. The main board is pretty locked. The only things that I'm like really considering changing are Riptide Rex, Vanguard Attendant, those 2 slots. There's a chance that you could put Thousand Tailed Watcher back in. I think it's obviously a good card. I'm more leaning towards putting it into sideboard specifically against green lists, because it just doesn't quite do enough into purple lists. Getting it fighter flighted or rebuked is like completely miserable, and it doesn't do too much for Viktor on board. Viktor, you'll give everything -1, and then your recruits run in and die anyways. So like things like Stratagem and Decree are just infinitely better for that. Like if they're holding a battlefield with 2 units that are 5/5, right? You play Watcher and like run into like the bigger battlefield, and if the other battlefield has 2 5/5s and they go down to 2/2s, you're running 4 recruits in to trade evenly. It's like it's not even a good trade even in like good circumstances. So it's good purely as like a defensive clear the battlefield. It's not so much good as like offensive finish the game that Imperial Decree and Grand Stratagem can really do. Okay. So that's the main board. We'll talk about the sideboard really quick. There's a lot of open slots in the sideboard. I've been trying to figure it out. There's a lot of open slots. So first off, 1x Grand Stratagem. This is mostly for green matchups. Sometimes you want to have a 4th copy, something like against Master Yi, Yasuo, Leona, I guess. Things that kind of dodge Singularity a little bit. It's nice to just have units on board, and green has a really hard time getting rid of your recruits, so your stratagems decrees are going to be very valuable. They usually don't run that many wind walls. It's like 1 main at most, and then like 1 additional on the side at most. So if you have more copies, the second one you cast is basically guaranteed to go through. If it gets wind wall, if the first one gets wind walled, it's fine. This is also really important into Aurora matchups, especially MF Aurora. You need more copies in your deck because they side in so many sabotages and mind splitters. Well, mind splitters in the main, but they'll side in a bunch of sabotages. So you really need more copies just to be able to go through. Next, you're running 1x Shen. Shen is really good into green matchups. It's really good. The math is really good. It breaks the math in a lot of green. +5 means that if they're planning to go in and they have 2 pump spells, it gives +4. Shen still beats over everything. It's just really good in green. It helps to flip tempo. If you're like 1 point down, just being able to hold the battlefield 1 turn longer really can help keep the points even until you can play your finishers like Stratagem or Decree. You're running 3. I'm running 2x Ledros. Ledros is like fine. Ledros kind of sucks, honestly. He's obviously strictly in this deck only for the Kaisa matchup. He's not even that good into Kaisa, to be honest. You really need to drop him like turn 3, turn 4. The earlier you drop Ledros, the better. If you're recycling 3-4 runes, like so be it. Kai'Sa has such a miserable time getting over Ledros. One thing you need to be careful of is Watcher as well as Darius Cleave. So for Ledros, you really, really want to have one, at least, hopefully two pieces of interaction. This being Call to Glory or Hidden Blade. You really, really want to have those just to protect Ledros in those circumstances. If they attempt to remove Ledros and fail, you win the game instantly. Don't forget, Ledros has ganking. I've forgotten many times. It is pretty miserable if you forget. Um, the ganking really helps solidify this card as like anti Kai'Sa. They'll run into one battlefield. You can eat whatever goes in and score 2 points a turn. They can only score 1 point a turn. You are like slightly worried about time warp, but it's something that you're gonna have to deal with. It's the earlier you drop it, the better. Um, turns 4, turn 5 is legitimately too slow. You kind of lose the game if you play Ledros. So you really need to pray you draw him early. If you have him in the mulligan, it's like you can save it if you have units, but it's like kind of sketchy. You're running 3x Facebreaker. You could go down to 2. I have 3. It's strictly for, well, it's for the Annie matchup as well as any list that doesn't run a ton of units. Being able to hold like Shen really flips the point lead a lot of the time. If they just don't have units to be able to take, you can Facebreaker, stun whatever crappy unit you have on there, and then if you can hold it for 1 extra turn, that can usually shift the game. Lastly, we have 1x Noxian Drummer. This is basically just as a side-in for purple decks. Again, this card is not a good card, but sometimes you need it for purple decks. You would side out something like Manufacturer or Vanguard Captain because they're a little bit lower ceiling, or I guess they have a lower floor than Drummer does. Yeah. But yeah, so that's the sideboard. We'll really quickly go over the runes and the battlefields. So runes. Um, So runes are 6 and 6. Pretty standard stuff. You do need a lot of yellows for this deck because you have Seal of Unity. You theoretically could go down, but you risk not being able to cast Grand Stratagem. I've had times where I have 5 blue runes out and 1 yellow rune, and I forget that Grand Stratagem needs a bunch of yellow, and I'll just roll over and die. That's happened before, but you do need the blue to be able to cast Singularity and Riptide, um, and Sprite Mothers. There's a lot of power classes in this deck, and that's kind of how it goes. Battlefields, Trifarian War Camp. This one's pretty standard. It's fine. I don't even think it's that good of a battlefield. It doesn't really give you that much. It enables you to hold onto the battlefield slightly better. The slightly bigger thing is you can attack into it a little bit easier. 2 might units die to 2 recruits, which is pretty relevant. Like your recruit lives. And then, bigger units get less benefit from this than smaller units, obviously. So you do get slightly more benefit from this battlefield than other decks. Your going first battlefield is the Arena's Greatest. This is a tempo deck. You are trying to get on the board as soon as you can and then play a finisher. It plays a lot like Bad Annie. Instead of going onto battlefields and retreating, instead you're just committing minimum number of units to be able to score points, and then finish it off with things like Singularity, Imperial Decree, and Grand Stratagem. Your going second battlefield is Vilema's Lair. This is really just an anti-Annie, anti-purple list, anti-purple battlefield. Um, Obviously, Annie is like the big thing, but this also is plenty good enough into Teemo and Yasuo, especially Yasuo, which is kind of funny. There's been a lot more Yasuos popping up in my local scene, which is kind of funny. I had Vilema's before then, but especially bad because they aren't able to utilize their legend as good, and then Fight or Flight and Flash don't work for those. But yeah, so that's the basic list. Thanks for watching. Let me know if you guys want to see a little bit more in depth on what I've picked and what I've cut, notable cards that I cut from the list, and why I cut them from the list, as well as other general matchup experience, matchup thoughts, um, for the list. But yeah, thanks for watching.